In art, hands are considered one of the most difficult things to draw, but there's a way you can easily make them in about 10 minutes. A lot of techniques most artists show you are good on their own, but they're not really meant for beginners. Most of them expect you to already know exactly how the final drawing should look, which can be really hard to do. But after spending weeks trying different strategies, I landed on a method that gives you perfect looking hands every time. And this will work for any character, no matter the proportions, age, or gender. So for our first step, most artists would usually start off saying, oh, first you gotta make a guideline for your hand using sticks and balls and shit. But there is something super important you need to do instead that will instantly make your hands a whole lot better. When it comes to drawing anything in general, there are like 50 things that will decide if it's even gonna look good at all. From posing, to shape language, to its form. And for a beginner, it is fucking difficult to envision all of this at the same time. So we need something we can look at and easily adjust to make sure everything looks good. Looking up random images online is fine, but it can be very time consuming to find specific references. And 3D models, in my opinion, can be a pain in the fucking ass to work with. But there's a solution that is so easy and flexible, I don't really understand why more artists don't do this. Before you start drawing, record a video of yourself playing around with different hand gestures. Try overlapping your fingers, curving them into arcs, or playing around with depth by pointing some fingers towards or away from the camera. Once you've got a good amount of footage, go through the video and screenshot the poses that stand out to you. And don't worry if your hand shape doesn't match your characters exactly, because we're going to use this picture simply as a guide to help us draw the perfect, most dynamic looking hand. For step 2, since we actually have a reference now, we can just use a completely different approach for sketching our hand. The first thing I want you to do is look at your reference and visualize the overall shape of it, or just physically color it black, I guess. Since humans recognize objects by their shape first, starting with the outline of our hand makes spotting mistakes and fixing them a whole lot easier, rather than trying to understand what's wrong with something that looks like this. Using your sketch brush, start by drawing simple, disjointed lines to replicate the outline of your reference. Try to make a line for each major bump and curve you notice in your hand. Doing this method makes it easier to adjust your proportions based on your character's body type because of how everything is represented as a simple line. For example, if you need a masculine hand, look to use straighter, rigid lines or use the liquify tool to make your fingers wider and stubbier. And vice versa for feminine hands. Look to use curved, smooth lines and make your fingers longer. If you need your hands to look older, have the lines at each joint of the finger curve inwards so that they look skinnier, and the complete opposite for baby hands. The key is to understand how you can manipulate each line to express the body type that you need. Once you're happy with your outline, we can now move on to drawing the inside of our sketch. To make this process easier, understand that this idea of drawing the outline first can apply to literally anything that you sketch. For example, if you have fingers that are grouped up inside of your hand, draw their overall shape the same way you just did previously, and then add the lines to separate them. Why do you think beginners are always drawing the two middle fingers together? Because it's easier. That's exactly the same idea here. One last thing before moving on, there might be a point where your hand looks a little flat, so there are some easy things we can do to add more volume to your hand. The first and easiest way is just to replicate the creases of your hand. This isn't that important for now since we're going to be coloring these instead, but just so it looks more 3D, it's nice to add them in now. The second and one of the best ways is to draw the nails in your sketch. Nails convey where the front of your fingers are, which can help viewers visualize the form of your hand. Focus specifically on curving the bottom and top of the nails to follow the cylindrical form of your finger, and the sides of the nail should face where the finger is pointing at. As you can see, adding the nail helps a lot with adding visual clarity to your hand, since you can easily recognize each finger's orientation and position. Line art, oh line art. How much I fucking hate. Okay, honestly, it's not as bad as it seems. As long as your original sketch is good, you don't have to be scared. I have a really good method that might even boost your line art skills. Like I've said before, the overall shape of the hand is super important to keep intact. So using a soft line art brush, which you can find in my Patreon by the way, start by line arting the outline. The hard part of line art comes when trying to adjust your drawing technique based on the type of hand you want to create. What I mean by that is for younger hands, I like to draw quick, smooth lines to make my hand look smooth. For older hands, I usually draw my lines a little slower so that I can get a nice, wobbly, rigid feel for my hand. Be sure to press down hard when outlining. The hand's shape should be bold and the first thing that people notice. After you're done, you can go back and add some line weight. A rule of thumb that I have is that I like to add weight where two different fingers meet and where my wrists connect to the hand. Using an eraser is also really smart for getting rid of weight if you want to add more variety. The next thing we need to do is then line art the inside of our hand. For this part, use the same technique you've been using for the outline, but press lightly this time. This creates a nice contrast in our art that makes the line art feel more dynamic. For the line weight inside the hand, I actually like to do something a little interesting. So I like to find where the absolute darkest parts of my reference is and fill it with line art and then blur it. It's basically kind of like shading, but with the line art instead. This lets the line art blend in nicely with my coloring, which I find super nice. I also like to erase the line art in places where a finger might be pressing against another finger. As for the nails, I like to bold the tip of them and erase the bottom part of it while having the sides be a little thin. After you have the line art done, it might look a little too rough, and this can happen if you line art it with black. Line arting with black isn't a bad thing, but I personally feel like it makes my line art look a little weird, so we can add a little makeup to fix it. Pick a color that is close to the skin color you're planning to make your hand, take an airbrush tool, and just color around the inside of your hand. This will make your line art look a lot softer. One last thing, I just like to randomly blur some parts of the line art because it just makes it blend nicer with the coloring we're going to do later. Before we move on to step 4, if you would like to try and replicate any of the hands shown in this tutorial, you can download their original file on my Patreon. You can see the color, outline, and sketches separately so you can learn each step better. You can also look to improve your line art by lining the sketches for yourself, or improve your coloring by using the professional level line art included. After we're done with the line art, we can now move on to the next step. So one of the biggest struggles beginners have with hands is coloring and shading. The most common example is people doing this sort of pillow shading, which can look very flat, and this usually stems from people's misunderstanding of what the purpose of shading is. A lot of people think the most important part about shading is conveying where the light source is, which is completely wrong. The purpose of shading is to literally just convey what the object is structured like. Let's take a simple cube for example. As long as the different faces of the cube are distinct colors, your brain will consistently see it as a cube regardless of how random the colors seem to be. And this is how you should be thinking about coloring a hand. Take your reference image, turn it into grayscale, and now as best as you can, separate these values into separate shapes. These shapes represent the different faces of your hand, just like the faces of a cube. So using your chosen skin color palette and a marker brush tool, try to replicate these 2D shapes onto the hand that you've created. The placement doesn't have to be perfect. Like I've said before, as long as it's placed in the same relative spot, you should be fine. And don't be afraid to change these shapes based on the body type of your hand. If you want it to look older, stronger, or more masculine, try to use sharper shapes like triangles or squares. If you want it to be younger, softer, or more feminine, try using rounder shapes. After we defined all of the different faces of our hand, now we can do different easy as hell techniques to refine everything that we've had so far, and turn this polygon-ass model into an actual hand. Like we've mentioned before, the main goal of shading is to convey the structure of our hand. So this time we have to show that our hand is a soft thing that we can squish. One of the most important concepts to creating a very good rendered object is to have a balance between soft and hard shadows. And a really good technique that I like doing to keep this balance is using the blur tool and blurring only the middle of the shapes we've created and leaving the edges hard. If you want to convey that your hand is more youthful or feminine, you can blur these shapes a little more, and vice versa, older masculine, blur less. After you blurred out your hands a bit, the shadows might feel a little bit stiff, like each area is just one solid color, which can look a little weird. To fix this, take an airbrush tool and using the base color of your skin, go over the dark parts of your hand and lightly add a little gradient to the bottom of these shapes. This creates some kind of bounced lighting effect, and it also makes the colors more dynamic. After smoothing out the hand, you'll notice that it might have lost a little bit of its form. So a really good thing we can do is add some subtle lines to capture back that illusion of volume. Lines are a very good way of giving a visual indicator of the form of our object. Imagine if I showed you a circle and then added lines to it. Your brain would then interpret it as a sphere instead. So the first lines we can draw are the creases of our hands. Just use a marker tool to draw where the creases are on your hand and blur the edges of it while leaving the middle hard. Another thing we can do is use a soft line art brush and use a blue color to lightly draw veins that also wrap around the form of the hand. And finally, the last lines we can emphasize are the tendons of our hands. Starting from the middle of the finger, draw a dark and light line side by side that points towards the center of your wrist, and this time, slightly blur all of it. This shows the viewer where the top of the hand is, which helps a lot with showing its volume. Finally, based on the age, gender, or body type of your character, you can now go back and emphasize any of these features of your hand. Use the liquify tool to make the finger stubbier or longer, or add some cuts to show the form of the hand even more. Just have fun experimenting and figure out what works best for you. If you're a beginner who's looking for professional, structured lessons to improve your art, and you want one-to-one guidance, consider joining my new art course on Patreon. I'm going to be posting weekly, high-quality videos that will teach you everything you need to know about art, and helping you realize your fullest potential. Use the code IFUCKWITHSomeNormalArtist to get 30% off of your first month. This offer will last till July.